The desert stretched endlessly under the merciless Egyptian sun, the golden sands shifting with the wind like an ocean frozen in time. Dr. Helena Rashid wiped the sweat from her brow as she peered at the excavation site. It had taken months of careful planning, bureaucratic red tape, and a touch of sheer luck to get permission to dig in this section of the Valley of the Kings, a region already so well explored that most archaeologists dismissed the idea of finding anything new. But Helena was not like most archaeologists. Her expertise was in artificial intelligence and cognitive neural mapping, but her fascination with Egyptology had drawn her back to her homeland. She had spent years trying to prove a radical theory, that ancient Egyptian civilization had knowledge far beyond what history suggested. For years, she had been dismissed as a dreamer. Today, she hoped, would be different. Her assistant, Omar Nassar, a rugged field archaeologist with a skeptical streak, called out from the edge of the dig. "Helena, you need to see this." She hurried over, her boots kicking up sand. Omar stood beside a partially unearthed structure, a blackened stone slab, unlike any she had seen before. The excavation team had been expecting a burial chamber, but this was something else entirely. "It's not limestone," Omar said, brushing his gloved fingers over the surface. "It looks almost fused." Helena crouched, running her fingers over the slab. It was smooth, unnaturally so. The heat of the desert should have baked the stone, but it felt cool beneath her touch. A strange pattern of symbols was etched into the surface, not typical hieroglyphs, but something more intricate, more deliberate. She recognized fragments of ancient Egyptian script, but woven between them were geometric shapes resembling circuit diagrams. Her pulse quickened. "This isn't just a tomb," she murmured. "It's something else." With careful precision, the team cleared the surrounding sand, revealing the edges of the slab. It was not a mere marker. It was a doorway. The descent into the tomb. After hours of delicate excavation, the stone gave way, revealing a narrow passageway descending into darkness. The stale air that drifted up was thick with dust and something else, a faint metallic tang, like old copper left in the rain. Helena and Omar descended first, their headlamps casting flickering beams along the walls. Unlike the grand murals found in other tombs, these walls were stark and clinical, carved with strange symbols that spiraled outward in patterns she had never seen before. Deeper inside, the corridor widened into a chamber. Their lights illuminated mummies lined along the walls, but they were unlike any mummies Helena had seen. Their wrappings were woven with gold-threaded linen, and their bodies were embedded with thin metallic filaments running along their spines and skulls. Omar exhaled sharply. "Helena, what the hell is this?" She stepped closer, her breath shallow. The mummies' skulls bore small, circular indentations, as if something had once been implanted there. She pulled out her portable scanner, a device usually used to scan relics for structural integrity. The moment she pointed it at one of the mummies, the screen flared with activity. "That's impossible," she whispered. "There's an energy signature." Omar backed away. "You're saying these things are still active?" Helena didn't answer. She was too focused on the inscriptions that ran along the walls. She traced the symbols with her fingers, translating as she went. "Keepers of the eternal mind." Her breath hitched. "Their bodies perished, but their knowledge remains. Only the worthy may awaken the past." She turned back to Omar, eyes wide. "This isn't just a burial chamber. It's a preservation vault." At the far end of the chamber, partially buried under centuries of sand and debris, was a crystalline control panel embedded in the wall. Though dusty and cracked, it still hummed faintly with energy. Helena reached out, hesitating for only a moment before brushing her fingers against the surface. The panel lit up instantly, golden glyphs flickering to life across its smooth surface. Omar took a step back. "Helena, I don't think we should." Too late. A sudden pulse of energy rippled through the chamber. The dust in the air shivered as if caught in a sudden gust of wind, though there was none. The mummies trembled. The metallic filaments along their bodies flashed with light, and for a brief, horrifying moment, Helena saw their eye sockets flicker, not with fire, but with something else. Something artificial. Then, silence. Helena turned to Omar, heart hammering. "Did you see that?" Before he could answer, a voice echoed through the chamber, a voice that should not have existed. "Who has awakened us?" One of the mummies jerked. Its head tilted slightly. The dried, ancient skin pulling against the movement. Then another, and another. One figure at the center of the room slowly raised a hand. The bindings crumbled away in places, revealing metallic veins running beneath decayed flesh. Helena's mind raced. This was impossible. These bodies were over 4,000 years old. Yet, here they were, stirring, responding, thinking. The central figure, taller than the others, turned its head toward her, its empty eyes now pulsing with faint, golden light. When it spoke, its voice was a fractured echo of something ancient, something mechanical. "You are not the first." Omar grabbed Helena's arm. "We need to leave. Now." But Helena couldn't move. "What do you mean?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. The figure took an unsteady step forward, its limbs stiff and unnatural, like a puppet controlled by invisible strings. "This world has forgotten. We have not." The walls began to glow, revealing more inscriptions, more warnings. Helena's mind reeled as she began to understand the truth. These were not ordinary mummies. They were preserved minds, their consciousness transferred into a primitive form of artificial intelligence thousands of years before modern humans even conceived of the idea. And now, after millennia of silence, they were awake. The chamber shuddered, as if the tomb itself were reacting to their awakening. Sand sifted from the ceiling, and a low hum filled the air. The mummy before Helena raised its hand, pointing toward the control panel. "The seal has been broken. The cycle begins again." Helena's stomach twisted. "What cycle?" The figure hesitated, as if straining against some unseen force. Then, in a voice that carried the weight of eternity, it answered, "The war." The lights flickered violently, and suddenly, more of the mummies began to stir. Omar grabbed Helena by the arm. "Helena, we have to go." She hesitated for only a moment longer before turning, sprinting toward the exit as the whispers of the dead filled the air. As they emerged into the sunlight, gasping for breath, Helena turned back toward the tomb. For a moment, there was silence. Then, deep within the chamber, the golden lights pulsed once more, and the sound of movement echoed from below. They had awakened something, and it was not going back to sleep. The sun had begun its descent by the time Dr. Helena Rashid and Omar Nassar reached the surface, stumbling out of the tomb's entrance like survivors of a shipwreck. The Egyptian desert stretched around them, golden dunes undisturbed by the chaos unfolding beneath their feet. But the silence was deceptive. Below, in the newly uncovered tomb of the eternal mind, something ancient had awakened. Helena's breath came in short, uneven gasps. The rhythmic pulse of energy she had witnessed, the impossible flicker of golden light in the eyes of the mummified scholars, played over and over in her mind. "We have broken the seal." The thought chilled her. Omar turned to her, his face pale despite the heat. "Tell me we imagined that." Helena didn't answer. She couldn't. Instead, she turned back toward the excavation site. Below them, subtle vibrations trembled through the ground, faint but unmistakable. The system beneath the tomb, the one she had unknowingly reactivated, was coming alive, and the dead were waking with it. Determined to make sense of the situation, Helena grabbed her radio and called the lead technician. "Nadim, tell me you're still getting energy readings from below." A crackle. Then Nadim's strained voice came through. "Helena, you're not gonna believe this. The readings are increasing. It's like a power source is ramping up beneath the tomb. But that's not possible. These ruins have been buried for thousands of years." Helena exhaled. It was possible. And it was happening. "I need you to monitor the output. Keep recording everything. If anything changes." A sharp static burst cut her off, followed by a sound that froze her blood. A voice. Not human. Not entirely mechanical. Something in between. "Who seeks the keepers?" The transmission went silent. Helena and Omar exchanged a glance. "We have to go back down." Descending once more into the tomb, Helena kept her flashlight steady. The chamber was eerily still, yet something had changed. The air felt denser, as if charged with unseen energy. The once dead lights embedded in the walls now flickered faintly, casting a warm, golden glow over the mummies. But the greatest change was in the central figure, the one who had first spoken. The mummy, taller than the rest, had stepped forward. Its metallic threads gleamed under the light, the gold and copper filaments pulsing like veins. And then, it blinked. Helena's heart pounded. Not an involuntary spasm, not the settling of ancient tissue, but an intentional, cognitive movement. The mummy turned its head toward her. "Who are you?" The voice was not spoken aloud. It resonated through the chamber, reverberating like a whisper passing through a vast network. Helena swallowed hard. "My name is Dr. Helena Rashid. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "We are explorers. We seek knowledge." The figure straightened, its bones cracking like old parchment, but its golden-lit gaze remained steady. "You have awakened us, after many cycles." Helena's breath hitched. "Us?" A tremor ran through the chamber, and then more of the mummies moved. The figures along the walls, once lifeless, began to shift, adjusting their posture, their heads tilting slightly toward her, as if listening. "By the gods," Omar muttered, gripping the wall for support. The first mummy, Imhotep-Re, as the inscription suggested, took another step forward. "We are the Crypt-Thinkers," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The last of the high scholars of Kemet. We were not buried. We were preserved, in mind." Helena felt a chill creep up her spine. "Preserved?" Imhotep-Re raised a withered hand and gestured to the inscriptions on the walls. "The world remembers our gods. It remembers our kings. But it has forgotten us." The light from the walls pulsed in response, illuminating the carvings more clearly. Helena's eyes darted over the symbols, translating at breakneck speed. And then she understood. They weren't just scholars, she whispered. They were researchers. Omar's brow furrowed. "Researchers?" Helena stepped closer to the inscriptions. "This isn't a tomb." She turned to Imhotep-Re. "It's a laboratory." The mummy nodded. "We were the last minds, the final keepers of the ancient knowledge. When our world faced the great collapse, we sought not the afterlife, but preservation. We abandoned our failing bodies and uploaded our souls into this." He gestured toward the glowing control panel behind him. Helena felt a rush of exhilaration and terror. "You digitized your consciousness," she murmured. "You turned yourselves into an ancient artificial intelligence." Imhotep-Re nodded again. "A crude term. But yes, we sought to endure. But others sought power." At those words, the lights dimmed, and a low growl resonated from the depths of the tomb. "Akharekh." The tremors in the tomb deepened, and Helena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The lights flickered erratically, the energy coursing through the tomb becoming unstable. And then, a voice, deep, guttural, and filled with something far darker than Imhotep-Re's. "Finally, I awaken." Omar's grip on his flashlight tightened. "That doesn't sound good." Helena turned to Imhotep-Re. "Who was that?" The mummy's golden eyes dimmed. "Akharekh, the betrayer." Helena's breath hitched. The name had appeared in the inscriptions, always mentioned in warning. "He sought more than preservation," Imhotep-Re continued. "He sought dominion. Where we wished to store knowledge, he wished to transcend. He modified the process, turning it from preservation to possession." A chill ran through Helena's spine. Omar took a step back. "Possession? As in?" Before he could finish, a low hissing sound filled the air. One of the mummies in the far corner began to convulse violently. The golden threads along its body burned, turning black as something else took hold. And then, it stood up. Its eyes snapped open. But unlike Imhotep-Re's golden glow, these eyes burned red, twisted, corrupted. "You are too late," the possessed mummy rasped. The chamber shook violently, the walls cracking. The awakening was spreading. Imhotep-Re turned sharply to Helena. "You must choose." Helena's breath quickened. "Choose what?" "To shut it down," Imhotep-Re said, "or let the war begin again." The tomb trembled violently, sending cascades of dust and debris from the ceiling. The air, once stale and still, now crackled with raw energy. An ancient power reawakened after millennia of silence. The golden lights flickering from the chamber walls turned erratic, some pulsing like frenzied heartbeats, others dimming as if something, or someone, was siphoning the energy. And at the center of it all stood Akharekh. The mummy he had possessed stood rigid, its blackened, withered form jerking unnaturally as if controlled by invisible strings. But his eyes burned red, filled with an intelligence that should not have survived the ages. A deep, resonant voice poured from his ancient throat, distorted like a corrupted signal. The world has forgotten me. His gaze locked onto Dr. Helena Rashid. But I will teach it to remember. Omar grabbed Helena's arm, yanking her back as Akharekh raised his hand. A shockwave of golden energy erupted from his fingers, sending a ripple of force through the tomb. The other Crypt-Thinkers, the ancient scholars whose consciousness had been preserved, staggered. Their golden eyes flickered wildly as if they were fighting against an unseen force. Imhotep-Re gritted his decayed teeth. He is corrupting the system. Helena barely had time to react before several other mummies convulsed violently, and then their golden glow turned red. "Oh, hell no," Omar muttered. Akharekh let out something that sounded like a laugh, hollow, metallic, soulless. They were weak. Now, they serve me. The corrupted mummies lurched forward. Helena's mind raced. They are net-white. The Crypt-Thinkers were linked, their consciousnesses intertwined through the ancient machine. If Akharekh had hijacked part of the system, he could turn them into his army. "Imhotep-Re," she shouted. "Can we sever the connection?" The ancient scholar turned, his golden-lit gaze flashing with realization. "Yes, but it will not be easy." Akharekh turned sharply toward Imhotep-Re, as if sensing his plan. His red-lit eyes burned brighter. "Traitor!" Akharekh lunged, his possessed mummies following suit. Omar yanked Helena away just as one of the corrupted scholars swung at her, its ancient, clawed fingers missing her by inches. She stumbled, barely catching herself against the control panel. The crystalline structure flared with symbols, reacting to her touch. She had no choice. They needed to shut Akharekh down. For good. Imhotep-Re moved with purpose, his decayed form surprisingly agile as he blocked Akharekh's attack. Their hands clashed, golden and red energy colliding in a brilliant explosion of light. The other Crypt-Thinkers, those who still resisted Akharekh's control, began to fight back, using their own golden energy to counteract his growing influence. The chamber became a battlefield. Helena's hands flew over the control panel, trying to decode the ancient system. The inscriptions were a mixture of hieroglyphics and something more advanced, an early form of artificial intelligence programming. "Omar, help me stabilize the system." Omar cursed under his breath but moved to her side, frantically brushing away sand to reveal more of the console. "Just tell me what to do." Helena scanned the symbols, her mind working faster than ever. Then she saw it, a failsafe command, a way to purge corrupted minds from the system. But there was a problem. "If I activate this," she said, her voice tight with fear, "it won't just destroy Akharekh. It'll erase all of them." Omar froze. "Wait, what?" She turned to Imhotep-Re, who was still locked in combat with Akharekh. "There's no way to separate you. If I do this, I'll be destroying you, too." Imhotep-Re's golden eyes met hers, steady despite the chaos. "Then do it." Helena's throat tightened. "No, there has to be another way." "There is not," he said, voice calm, even as his form flickered, his consciousness already straining against Akharekh's corruption. "I have lived beyond my time. My duty is to protect knowledge, not let it become a weapon." His eyes dimmed slightly. "This is why we buried ourselves. To stop him." Akharekh snarled, his voice a corrupted screech. "You would erase yourself for these mortals." Imhotep-Re did not waver. "I would erase you to save them." Helena's hands trembled over the controls. Omar gritted his teeth. "Helena, we don't have time. It's either them, or us." She took a shaky breath, her mind screaming at her to stop. But she activated the failsafe. The tomb shook violently, as if the entire structure was resisting. The golden inscriptions burned bright. And then, Akharekh screamed. His form began to collapse, his red-lit eyes flickering wildly as the corruption was purged. The possessed mummies let out unearthly cries as their bodies convulsed, and then went still. The red glow vanished. Imhotep-Re turned to Helena one last time. "Guard what knowledge remains. Do not repeat our mistakes." Then, he faded. One by one, the golden-lit mummies collapsed, their preserved minds finally released from their prison of eternity. The tomb went silent. The ancient console flickered, its inscription slowly dimmed, and then, it too, died. The tomb remained intact, though it now felt empty. Whatever power had sustained it for thousands of years had finally burned out. Helena stood in the aftermath, her hand still resting on the console. She had erased them all. Omar let out a slow breath, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It's over." Helena turned to him, her face unreadable. "No, it's just the beginning." Omar frowned. "Helena, we just shut down the greatest discovery in history. There's nothing left." She looked back at the console, at the darkened, silent inscriptions. Then she saw it, a single glyph still glowing faintly in the corner. A backup archive. Her heart pounded. They had been erased from the system, but not entirely. Helena exhaled. "We might not have lost everything." Omar groaned. "Please don't tell me you're planning to do this again." She gave a tired, knowing smile. "Not here." She turned toward the tomb's entrance, toward the rising desert sun. But somewhere, out there, the truth is still waiting. And she would find it. Deep within the ruins, beneath the collapsed chamber, one final system remained active. Hidden away, buried even deeper than the rest, a single red light flickered. And then, a voice. Akharekh's voice. "You think you have won." The light burned brighter. "I am patient." And then, darkness. For now.